Hi, you guys. Welcome to Strangers with Kittens. I got my Snoopy here. I got my Kermit there. I've been thinking a lot about getting back in touch with myself. I feel like we're at the age where a lot of us may be going through empty nest syndrome, may be starting over in some way or another, whether it's retiring or taking on a second act in some way, maybe divorcing, starting a different career, kids going away to college, or they're already out of college, but we spend so much time focusing on a certain career, our families, whatever. And now we're coming to an age where we have more time to ourselves. We can make choices just based on what do I like? What do I feel like doing? And it's weird. It's a little unsettling at first because sometimes you can kind of feel like, well, what do I like? And then there's a part of me that's like, what are you, a loser? Like, why don't you know what you like? But when you focus so hard on just getting through the day and getting everything done that you need to get done and taking care of your responsibilities, you lose sight of that. And so bringing a little bit of my childhood back is helping me get in touch with the person that I was before kids, before full-time working, before all of the responsibilities that life throws at you, and you got to just keep dancing as fast as you can. I used to like to draw Snoopy, and I just started doing that. I'd be journaling or whatever, and I'd just sort of do a little doodle of Snoopy lying on one of the lines of the note page. It just brought me back in touch with myself doing things like that. So you might want to give it a try. Getting back in touch with your younger self reminds you of who you are. And not that you're going to like all those things again, but I feel that for me, getting back in touch with that stuff has helped me figure out what I want going forward. Not that I have all the answers, but I'm figuring it out. For a little while, I felt a bit stuck, and I don't anymore. And that's one of the things that helped get me unstuck.
Strangers with Kittens, Gen X stories from the least parented generation.
So I was thinking about jobs. A while back, we had the wonderful Kimmy Gatewood, who's an actor and a director and who's killing it in Hollywood right now, directing TV shows. Marianne and I had her on as a guest talking about first jobs. And it was a great episode, but I feel like I didn't even begin to scratch the surface of all the jobs that I had. But I started working when I was 11, babysitting. And then I didn't stop. With a friend of mine, I got a job. I think we were 11 or 12, sixth grade, sticking stickers on pool cover samples, like a swatch about this big of plastic vinyl, the stuff that covers a pool cover before trampoline covers came out. People, I guess, these would be sent to people who had pools, and then they would presumably buy this pool cover because they like the feel of the sample. I don't know. We had to, I can't remember the name. I thought I would never forget this, but I can't remember the name of the company. We had to stick stickers with the company's name and phone number on these samples. And her mother got us the job, and we could do it at home. And we got 1 penny per sample. We would put in hours of work, and it would equal $2 or something. Because you had to take the sample out of the box, you had to peel the sticker off the thing, you had to put it together, you had to put it over here. And we got to where we could do it really quickly. We felt like we finally had mastered it, and we were going as fast as we can. It wasn't even worth it to a sixth grader who was desperate for money. So that's how little we were making. That was the first really bad job that I had, and always babysitting. Even through college, I was babysitting. But I used to rake leaves. I'd go door to door. Hi, I'm an 11-year-old girl, and it's 4:30 on November night, and I'm going to go knock on this stranger's house and see if they want their leaves raked. I'm lucky I'm not in a cage in somebody's basement right now. Then in ninth grade, I don't even remember how I got this job, but my friend and I got a job, and another girl that was a year older than us. Oh, two friends of mine and I got a job at an hors d'oeuvre factory. One town over, Saturday mornings. We had to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, and we made hors d'oeuvres. We made spinach puffs and cheese puffs and cocktail franks, and we would stand there and wrap all these wad of cheese in dough and put them in boxes. I used to listen to Casey Kasem's Top 40, and to this day, every time I hear I Just Called to Say I Love You by Stevie Wonder, I'm back in the hors d'oeuvre factory again, wrapping cheese puffs. And then our boss decided that it would be quicker if he got a conveyor belt, and it was right out of I Love Lucy. And we could not keep up with it. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was jamming cold cocktail wieners in my mouth and wads of pub cheese and whatever spinach puffs are made of besides spinach. I don't know. But I was putting it in my apron pocket and eating it because, otherwise they'd just fly off the conveyor belt. And like other friends of mine were that age and they were working in fast food restaurants, but not chains with any sort of OSHA rules or oversight of any kind, because those places you needed to be, I don't know, 16 maybe to work at like Burger King. But there were like hole in the wall little Chinese takeout places that would hire kids that were like teen and 14. And I remember one of my friends, this place was so small. It was like the size of a long closet. It was really narrow, and there was just enough room for like two people to come in and stand at the counter and place their order. There were no tables or chairs. It was just you walked in, you ordered, and you walked out with your food. Then there was a kitchen. It was basically just a kitchen with this counter right by the front door. And so there was no space to work. So all these guys were deep frying egg rolls, and my friend was working the phones and taking people's orders and got completely burned, third-degree burn on her arm with a scar from the oil from one of the cooks splashing deep frying oil on her. And it was like, okay, go home. Like nothing was ever done about it. Things have improved in a lot of ways in that regard. Then I got a job at Pathmark, which was key because you were part of a union. You had to pay union dues. You were part of a union and you had benefits. I cut my teeth at Pathmark for a year. And then the second I was old enough to get a job at Grand Union, I did, because it was significantly more an hour, whatever. If I was making $3 an hour at Pathmark, it was like $3.75 or $3.50 or something at Grand Union. So worked at Pathmark as a cashier, then worked at Grand Union as a cashier. One of the jobs I liked the most in my whole life was being a grocery store cashier. And yeah, it was hard to stand there for hours, and it was hard on the legs and feet, and it was cold in the winter sometimes. But I like talking to people, and I loved hearing their stories. And I loved that back then, this is before like Fresh Direct and Instacart, I felt like it was the great leveling field. There were rich people and poor people, and like everyone needs to eat. So everybody shopped for groceries. Maybe not people in Saddle River or something had maids for help that would do the grocery shopping. But for the most part, I just got to meet so many people, and I always had stories, and it was always so much fun. I had this manager. It was this short Italian guy. His name was Mr. Vozo, and he ran a tight ship. He was my first boss at Grand Union. And I'm telling you, I learned more from Mr. Vozo than anybody I ever worked for in my life, about work ethic, about always making sure that there isn't something that needs to be done. Always looking around and being like, what else? What is out of place? What can I do? We could never stand idle ever. If you were standing there and there were no customers, you had to go to produce and go through the blueberries and strawberries and get rid of the moldy ones and repack everything. You had to make sure you knew what everything was. Every piece of produce, you had to know what it was. And there would be tests. And he was 5'2", 90 pounds soaking wet. And he was such a force of nature. And even customers were afraid of him. He would stand up on this platform behind plexiglass and just supervise the whole, front end of the store. Sometimes he would say hello to people, and his voice was always the same, whether he was being friendly or whether he was angry. He was always kind of yelling. I remember this woman there was seltzer in glass bottles, and this woman was like a display. And it was like piled levels of seltzer, which probably wasn't the greatest idea, but it looked cool. And I guess she pulled one from not the top, and half of the bottles came crashing down. They broke on the ground. They were spinning around and spraying seltzer on everyone. And I remember she was just like a deer caught in headlights. She did not expect that to happen. She felt bad about it, and she didn't know what to do. And she was kind of looking around and just mortified. And Mr. Bozo was going, just walk away. Just walk away. And what he meant was, don't get hurt by the glass. Don't get sprayed by the seltzer. We're going to take care of it. You go. But it seemed like he was being sarcastic and being like, yeah, just F up the store and then walk away. And she was like, oh my God. She felt so bad. And so she wasn't walking away because she thought that that's what he was saying to her. But really, he was concerned for her well-being. And he was like, no, just walk away. We're going to take care of it. And so it was just this big fiasco. But I'm telling you, this guy taught me more about work and a work ethic and everybody pitching in and making yourself useful and being on it than anyone ever did, I think, in my whole life. And I think of him often because he passed away not that long after I started. He had cancer, and he was working like well into his diagnosis too. But I really admired him. He just took his job really seriously and he took a lot of pride in it. And that store was like a Navy ship. Like nothing was out of place. Everything was in stock all the time. The customer was always right. Such a well-oiled machine because of him. And then when he left, the other people that took over for him were fine, but nobody was like him. And even though he was scary, he was really, really good at his job. When I was a cashier, this was before scanners, there were price stickers on the items, but sometimes they fell off. Sometimes a stock person missed one with the price gun. So you'd have to look up a price. And the way you did that was on something called a microfiche, which if you haven't used one, it's like kind of like an overhead projector, except you're looking into it. And it's got a plate that has all the prices on it, like a small plate, and you have to move it around. But left is right and up is down. And I am someone who still to this day suffers from motion sickness. But when I was a kid, it was so bad. I couldn't be in the car for more than 15 minutes without puking everywhere. And that moving something and trying to focus on it, I guess it was like early days of trying to read your phone in the car. I could not get a grip on which way I needed to move it in order to look up what I needed to look up. So I just pretended. And during training, they would show you how to do it. And then each person would take their turn or whatever. I could not do it. And not only could I not figure out how to find the price, but it would make me really motion sick almost instantly. So I would just go over there, put my head in, try not to look at it, be like this, move the plate around, and then just go back to my register and make up a price. And I discovered very quickly that you better underguess. So the price is right. You got to underguess or you lose, because if you say something is $1.99 and it's $1.89, somebody's going to cause a stink and you're going to get in trouble. So I would always way underguess, and everybody was so happy with my prices that, and I was fast because I got fast because I had come from Pathmark, and I was making up prices for anything that didn't have a price on it. So like if I hesitated and was like, how much is this? Mr. Bozo was up on the platform supervising. And if I just kind of like pondered and then entered a price, it would be obvious that I made it up and I didn't go to the microfiche. So I would just sit there and act like everything was fine and act like everything had prices on them. But I would ring stuff up for 49 cents if I didn't know how much it was. So people loved me. And I was fast. So my line went very quickly. So even if there were only 2 people on other people's lines, sometimes there'd be 8 people on my line because it was like everything was for sale. Not everything. It wasn't like criminal, but I did make a lot of prices up, and they were always cheaper than the original price. Or if I really knew it, I would, from seeing a carton of milk go through so many times, what milk costs. So, that I wouldn't have to guess on. And then every now and then, just to make it look good, I would go over to the microfiche and be like, la, 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 la. There was this older couple. They were really little. I swear the woman was like 4'10", and the husband was 5 foot nothing. And they get on my line and I'm ringing stuff up, and I can feel them really intently watching me, staring at me. And they're both just standing there. They have winter coats on, and they're just standing there with smiles on their faces, staring at me. And finally I turn to them and I go, "What?" And they go, "We remember you when you were at Pathmark and you were as slow as molasses." They were like so proud that I was such a fast cashier now. They just stood there beaming. It was so sweet. And those moments are the moments that I miss about working at a supermarket, because people really connected with each other. There were crazy stories. Like one time this guy came in and tried to steal a bunch of meat, and he had it like in his coat and stuff, which he would have gotten away with, what he had a hat on. He had like a 1940s, like with the press kind of hat, or like a Frank Sinatra kind of hat. And he put a stake under his hat. And when he was walking out, blood was trickling down the sides of his face. And that's how they got him. Yeah, there were a lot. There were a lot of characters. There were people who would switch prices. They would be there for 3 hours. Like you'd see them come in, and then you wouldn't see them for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, they'd be on my line, and they'd have like stuff. Some stuff you couldn't switch prices on, like meat, because it had like its own special sticker with like whatever USDA business on there. But laundry detergent, high price things that had stickers on them, they would spend 2 hours going around the store and finding, whatever, 49-cent jar of pickles and switching the price to the biggest economy size box of Tide. And it was like, you think I was born yesterday? This is not the price. Then it was like a whole thing because it was like we're we're both operating under this web of deceit because I was like, all right, I know Tide is not 49 cents, but I also might not know exactly what the price is and I can't look it up on the microfiche. So then I'd be like, I'm going to go look this up on the microfiche. And then it was like a game of chicken where the person who was trying to get it for 49 cents and it was like $12 would be like, you can leave it off. Or they'd watch me go to the microfiche and see what I was going to come back with. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why this price says 49 cents. It's actually, $13.99 or whatever. Yeah, there were so many characters. And then people would come in and there'd be a couple or a mom who was pregnant and then you wouldn't see her for a little while and then she'd come in with a new baby and it was like, oh my God, you had the baby and da-da-da. And you're like bringing up their groceries and now they're buying formula or now they're buying baby food and you're talking to them about the baby. And it was something that I didn't think would ever really go away. And maybe it doesn't if you live in the same town you grew up in or you live someplace for a while. But I do think that, well, between the self checkout, which I absolutely hate, and I do it sometimes if I'm in a rush and I have one item. But between the self checkout and the scanners, the cashier is just looking for the UPC code and scanning it. And they don't have everything memorized because they don't have to sit there and enter it in. So they can't have a conversation with you and get to know you. And, I have my regulars at ShopRite that I go to the register and I talk to them and that's nice. But I don't know, it's a much bigger store. It's just a different experience. And these like interactions are not the like focal relationships of your life, but they do matter. You know? It's like Norm walking into Cheers, right? It's like it feels good when everyone's like Norm. I feel like I'm referencing Cheers all the time, and it's because I'm stressed. Because honestly, like sometimes at night, I cannot fall asleep because I'm just like anxious and thinking about the world as it is right now and the last horrible thing that was said about a group of people like the Somali population in Minnesota are being judged by the actions of 50 criminals. And then I can't get to sleep. And so I pop in a headphone and have my phone next to the bed and I'm like, where everybody knows your name, and watch Cheers for a little while and fall asleep because it makes me feel like the world is okay. I have this friend who is extremely emotionally intelligent and intuitive. And years ago during Trump 1.0, I didn't even realize how anxious I was. And she came over and I had Yacht Rock playing in the background. And she was like, oh, you're playing music from your childhood because you're really anxious. And I was like, what? I was like, are you a wizard? But that was totally what was going on. I just wasn't aware of it. So now I'm fully aware of it. And I'm like, let me immerse myself in all things 80s, 70s, and 80s. Yacht Rock's a little more 70s, maybe, and early 80s. But yeah, between the calm groove of it and the fact that it brings you back to a different period, it really soothes the soul. So even though it's December and not really beach weather, I highly recommend Yacht Rock and whatever sitcom you watched to self-soothe when you were home alone and trying not to be afraid. Cheers was what I watched while I was babysitting. I had a regular Thursday night babysitting gig, and I'd put the kids to, I'd give them dinner, I'd put them to bed, and then I'd sit in the family room and watch TV. And their family room was a room of windows, and you couldn't see out, but you knew that you were in a fishbowl, from the outside. And they had this cat, and I didn't grow up with cats. So, I mean, this cat was great and I loved her, but I wasn't super familiar with cat behavior. And the cat would be sitting on my lap and we'd be watching must see TV. And all of a sudden the cat would be like, and look out the window. And I was like, oh my God, there's an axe murderer on the other side of that glass and I can't even see him. And the cat would just do that like 10 times a night every Thursday just to F with me. And I would watch Cheers and hope I'd live to see the parents come home. It didn't help that When a Stranger Calls and Friday the 13th and all those movies were the big movies in pop culture. So it was always about like a teenage girl being stalked or babysitting and being terrorized. That was sort of the prevailing zeitgeist at that time. Oh, another thing about being a grocery store cashier in the 80s and 90s was needing to memorize things is you needed to know what was taxable and what items weren't taxable. So things like milk and eggs and bread are not taxable. But back then in New Jersey, soda was taxable because it wasn't considered essential. It was considered a luxury item. And tampons were taxable because the government recognizes your need for basic feminine protection, but all that horseback riding and swimming is going to cost you. So in 2023, I believe, the majority of states got rid of the tampon tax, which is so outrageous to begin with. But I'll tell you who still has tampon tax. Tennessee, Mississippi, Indiana, Arkansas, Kansas, West Virginia, Kentucky, Idaho, Arizona, Wisconsin, North Dakota, North Carolina, Utah, and I think there's more. Yeah. Oklahoma, Missouri, Wyoming, South Dakota, Hawaii, and Georgia. So if you live in any of those states, I highly recommend getting involved, writing a letter to your representative, and talking about what utter bullshit that is. It gets me so angry. It's so openly sexist and just one more way that women get the short end of the stick.
I worked at Neiman Marcus for like a month. I thought like, oh, this will be fun. It's like fancy and creative. And it was so awful. I just couldn't do it anymore. I just didn't show up after a while because so many of the customers were so obnoxious. And my boss was really demanding and strange. I quit that job.
When I started doing stand up, and I kept trying to like come up with ways that I could make enough money to quit my day job and just do comedy and go on auditions and still pay the bills. I was always patching together one thing or another. And one of the jobs was a party motivator. And they'd always be at like these rich people's homes and like mansions. And I would have to dress up in all different costumes. At one time, I was like Chiquita Banana with like a big thing of fruit on my head. But then I had sexy dress on and body glitter. And I had to dance with weird dudes. It felt very 10 cents a dance. And it's 1943. I didn't make enough money for that. God, it's a blur. I blocked it out. I think it's weird, you go to school and you think you're going to do this career and then that's going to be it. And that's going to be what you do. And then maybe you don't like it or it's just not for you. I did that for a long time and it was fine. But then there are all these things that sort of come up along the way. And every time I think back on it, I think, I want to know if this is a Gen X thing or if this is just a me thing. Did you have a lot of jobs? What were your favorite jobs? Shaped you the most? What would you go back to, even though it would be weird? There are certain jobs that just seem like more kid jobs. And certainly sticking stickers on pool cover samples seems like more of a sixth grader's job, and it sucked even then. I think you work toward something that you think is what you want. And then it's like, no, what I actually liked was talking to people, dealing with people, hearing their stories, not working in an office. I did not thrive in an office and seeing the same couple of people every day and being in a windowless area and just doing the same crap day after day. That was just one of the people that can't. If you feel like sharing, go on the website, strangerswithkittens.com, click on the answering machine, and tell me about your first, second, third, fourth jobs you had when you were a teenager, jobs you had just starting out when you were a young adult, jobs you had when you were a kid, because it was more acceptable to have a job when you were 11 back then than it is now, I think. I want to hear about them. So head to Strangers with Kittens and leave me a message. See ya.
Strangers with Kittens is taped before a live audience of dogs. If you like our show, please rate, review, and share on social media.